What do you call it?
The real players.
Yeah. I seen that.
What do you think about the real players?
I like it, but I got the biggest kick out of. I called. You had Rudy Wolfendale on once.
Yes.
And I had to call him afterwards because I says, Rudy, I said, how do you like the first question they ask you is, are you related to Maggie? I said, I love it. I said, because my son's the identifier of Delaware, and now, I'm just his father. Before he was my kid. Now I'm just his father,
Yeah.
But I love busting Rudy's balls because, I said, all these years you're on the racetrack and you're Maggie's uncle now. I said, he laughed.
What's your earliest memories? What made you want to throw your hat in this ring, man?
When I was a little kid, my dad used to take me to the races at Delaware Park because that was the only track at the time that let kids in. And I just fell in love with it. Then when I got a little bit older, I had an uncle that had a girlfriend that worked at the track, and he took me back there and got me a hot walking job at Keystone the first year they opened. And then I worked a couple summers when I was off for high school, and I just loved it. At first I thought I was going to be real smart and learn a bunch of stuff and cash a bunch of tickets, but that ain't happened. 40 some years that ain't happened, But I was always an athlete, and kind of transferring to the horses that are athletes. It's kind of the same thing, and I love it.
You will be considered one of the old timers, right? That been around a long time. What's the biggest difference from back in the days versus today?
Biggest difference is you've got a lot of people calling the shots in this industry that have no real say in the industry, that don't know anything about a horse. And you've got a lot of trainers now that don't even come to the barns, that train over the phone and just call things in. And, that would never happen. But as I say, between, PETA and HISA and all this, it's getting almost impossible to keep going. And they're not, these aren't people that have been doing this for a living. These are just people that decided we're bad people, and they decided we're abusing horses. And, they got to see what goes on back here and the care these horses get. And, that's the biggest difference.
What keep you coming back?
It's all I've ever done, really. And, as I say, I love the horses. I love the horses, and I love the competition, so.
How important is the men and women that work on the backside every day with these horses?
Oh, it's, they really important because, they're here, they live here. They're here all the time. I mean, it's all they do. A lot of these people never leave except for, like there's a fishing trip next week. A lot of these guys are going on a fishing trip. Some of these guys might not have left the stable area the whole meet. They live here. Yeah. And that's what they do. And, they gotta love the horses too,
Who was your mentor?
I started out with a guy named Fred Wilhelm, who he went way back. In fact, he worked for Eddie Neloy in New York years and years and years ago. He was really good friends with a guy named Howie Tesher that just passed away. And so he was an old-time horseman, real old. And that was who I came up under. And then I worked for a couple other people. I worked for a guy named Dave Van Ness and learned a lot from him. And another guy named Charlie Wise that trained at Calder, that learned a lot from him. Everybody does things different, and you got to try to put it together and get your own methods, Yeah. The best horse we ever had was Dinner and Odom. We bought him in Ocala, and he made $500,000 for us. He win stakes here, Delaware. I don't know if he won a stake in Miami, but he won a couple big races, and he was our baby. He was the best one we had. I was never around any of the classic horses or anything like that. Never. Just when we were at Figure Lakes, we used to have people ship in nice horses to us that we kind of babysat. Leo Veach used to send us horses all the time, and here again, what a horseman he was. And going back, we'd get horses from Badgett, we'd get horses from a lot of the big guys back then. But things have changed now. The horses, they don't trickle down. They don't, nobody wants to send you anything, even to babysit, because, horses are worth so much money. They don't want somebody else getting anywhere near them, So it's changed, but it's all we know.
And in your lifetime, who goes down as the best trainer
Oh, boy. The best trainer?
in your lifetime for you?
Wow. That's
That's a big.
that's a really tough question. Since I've been training, I've seen, I was in Philly when John Service had Smarty Jones. He did a hell of a job with him. I was around Scott Lake. He's won a ton of races. We were at Finger Lakes for 20 years. I was in the barn with Michael Ferraro, and he was a leading trainer every year. I can't really pinpoint who the best trainer I've been around was, but I know that me and Scott Lake are the only ones to ever win 4 in one day at Philly.
Wow.
So at least I got something with one of the big guys.
And how would you describe your training style?
Try to get the horses happy, feed them well. I try not to overtrain them, but they're all different. You got to train them all differently. But the biggest thing is trying to get them happy.
Yeah. And if you could change one thing, right, in this life, horse racing, what would that be?
Wow, one thing to change. Maybe we need like a commissioner, like in baseball and football and things like that, but it would have to be somebody that really has a knowledge of horse racing. Somebody, I don't know, like Bill Spar just retired. I don't know the man from you, but somebody like that's been doing this all their life and could be in charge of racing all throughout the country instead of a government issued thing.